Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We are going to slow down again because we've arrived at chapter 11. We've zoomed in a lot on chapters 9 and 10. Chapter 11, however, is in a sermon that will move kind of fast. And so I wanted to take the devotions for this part of the series to zoom in piece by piece a little bit more on this intertestamental period that is prophesied in Daniel chapter 11. Strictly speaking, there aren't silent years in the Bible because of this chapter. God did not give additional prophecies for that 400 years. So, in that sense, I get it. You could refer to them as the silent years. But the truth is that God had already spoken about those years. He had nothing more to say because this prophecy is so comprehensive. It foretells all of the political intrigue before it all happened. Remember, this is not written after the fact, but it's so accurate to the history of Alexander the Great and the subsequent feuding over the pieces of his empire that critics just say it was written after all of that. The problem is we have the book of Daniel. It's well preserved. And in addition to this, we also have the Septuagint, which was a Greek translation of the Old Testament that was written hundreds of years before Christ was even born. And so we've got multiple copies that predate these events. It is settled history. Okay? It is established. It is a fact. This text is older than Alexander the Great. So rather than going through the whole thing really fast, we're gonna take just the first 5 verses, and hopefully, if I've gathered good sources, I'll give you some historical insights into how these things played out. In the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to strengthen and protect him. Now I will tell you the truth. So this is the second half of a parenthetical. See yesterday's devotion for the running start to see how chapters 10 and 11 kind of bleed together. And at the apex of the two is this parenthetical from this angel, kind of saying he didn't think that the other angels had the guts to fight the demons over Persia and Greece, that he's just fighting and has to go back and fight the prince of Greece next. But all the while indicating that this is a message that comes from God, and it's something that's prophetic and it's historic, and it already is. He's coming from a realm outside of time that's already dealing with the next empire's demons. And so that's why he has the authority to tell Daniel what's going to happen before it happens. And he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia. So the opening of chapter 10, you could see that he's only in like the 3rd year of King Cyrus. Cyrus the Great was the first king, and he's ruling Persia, and that's when this prophecy is first given. But we already know the next kings. See, again, it's coming from outside of time. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th will be far richer than the others. Let's just deal with that first. Who are the next kings of Persia? Glad you asked. They are Cambyses. Right, from 530 to 522 BC. Pseudo-Smyrna, okay, with just like a brief 1 year showing in 522 BC. And then next, Darius the First. I never know if I'm saying this right because I've never heard anybody say this name. I've only read it. Hysaspes. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Please give me a phonetic pronunciation in the comments if you happen to know better than I do, because I've never heard anybody say that word before. I've only read it. And he goes from 522 to 486 BC. And then the 4th king is Ahasuerus, the king who's reigning in the book of Esther. For a verse-by-verse study of that book, go back and see Risk Everything. That's the series through the book of Esther. So what did the angel say? There will be 3 more kings in Persia, and the 4th will be far richer than the others. So those 3 more kings to arise in Persia are Cambyses, Pseudo-Smyrna, and Darius the First, Hysaspes. But what does it say about the 4th one? The 4th will be far richer than the others. Indeed, after Cambyses, Pseudo-Smyrna, Darius comes Ahasuerus, and he is in fact richer than the others. So right off the bat, immediately, we've already got fulfilled prophecy. Just think of the odds of like that alone being true. Because this all happened before Alexander the Great. And, this is all written and recorded by Daniel, spoken to him by this messenger angel in the 3rd year of King Cyrus. So he already knows the next kings, how long they're going to last, how rich they're going to be. God knows who's coming next, if anyone, and how much richer or poorer they're going to be than you. He already knows. He foreknows your financial struggles. He already knows who the subsequent rulers after the current administrations will be in the nations of the earth now. And we've already seen the final administration, the final world power is the Antichrist. So right off the bat, boom, there's a prophecy and it's fulfilled. Like imagine someone coming up and saying like, there will be 3 more presidents of the United States, but then a 4th one will usher in an era of prosperity. We'd be like, well, let's see how that goes, because like we're probably not going to, so, when it comes to presidents of the US, let's suppose that they all serve, just 2 terms each. All right. So you're already talking at least 24 years until the beginning, 24 years of the longest to the beginning of this next guy's reign. What if they're 4 one-term presidents? That's going to be 12 years into the future at the shortest. And then you're already going to tell me that that guy's going to have a better financial time than we are. Like we're currently looking at a deficit in over 30 trillion. Okay. By the way, Trump, should be willing to admit he didn't do anything to address the deficit in his first term. At least now he has some sort of plan somehow involving crypto and AI to make the U.S. sort of the central hub for all of that, to help us help us offset and eventually pay off debt and lead to that decrease in the deficit. That would be a pretty hard pill to swallow, wouldn't it? But it's exactly what the angel just said. He just predicted the upcoming administrations over Persia, and he even predicted that the 4th one would be far richer than the others. By the power he gains through his riches, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. So there's the background to the movie 300. Because when you arrive at King Xerxes, also known as Ahasuerus, Xerxes hated the Greeks. He hated them. What's left out of the movie 300 is him going out and trying to whip the waves, because he also lost like 300 ships to a storm. And he hated the Greeks. Then a warrior king will arise. He will rule a vast realm and do whatever he wants. Who's that warrior king, do you suppose? It's Alexander the Great. It's Big Al. Okay, and he's very young. 29 years old. He conquers the known world. But as soon as he is established, his kingdom will be broken up and divided to the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his descendants. It will not be the same kingdom that he ruled, because his kingdom will be uprooted and will go to others besides them. The king of the south will grow powerful, but one of his commanders will grow more powerful and will rule a kingdom greater than his. All right. Big Al says on his deathbed, leave it to the strong. And so it's broken up among one of his mentors, another guy his age, possibly just a friend of his. Kind of like it was sort of just dispersed among Big Al's buddies and one of his former teachers. And then the king of the south. Which one is the king of the south? I'll submit to you, this is likely Ptolemy Soter of Egypt from 323 BC to 285 BC. I think the king of the south is Ptolemy Soter from Egypt. But one of his commanders will grow more powerful and rule a kingdom greater than his. So who are we talking about here? This is likely Seleucus IV Nicator from 311 to 280 BC. So we've got Ptolemy, and then one of his generals, Seleucus, betrays him, becomes the ruler of Babylonia, Media, and Syria. And indeed, the Seleucid Empire would become more powerful than the Ptolemaic Empire. These are just the first 5 verses of a 45-verse chapter. And we've already gone as far as, 280 BC? So a huge chunk of the intertestamental period is already foretold politically in the first 5 verses of chapter 11. You see how far, see how much ground we've just covered here? Like, this is all given while the Persians are still in power. He knows the next 3 kings, right? Cambyses, Pseudo-Smyrtus, Darius the First, and Ahasuerus. And sure enough, Ahasuerus is richer than the others. Followed by the rise of Greece, Alexander the Great. Big Al does what he wants. And then, here it is again, 4 winds of heaven. As soon as that warrior king is established, he's doing everything he wants, then he dies young. Possibly in an alcohol-related incident. His health fades, he dies. And then it's divided 4 ways. Divided to the 4 winds of heaven. And it's not the same kingdom. It's not ancient Greece. They become their own feuding dynastic empires. And the one who is in the south, that is Ptolemy Soter of Egypt, is betrayed by his right-hand man, one of his commanders. All right, Seleucus Nicator would rule Babylonia, Media, and Syria, and indeed would exceed him in power. But the stage is just set for the drama to unfold hereafter. Take a look at the opening chapter of First Maccabees. This is in the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. I've not done much work with the Apocrypha, so let me know if I'm using like a junk translation, because I don't know. I don't know much about the ancient manuscripts that led to what we as Protestants call the Apocrypha. But I know that it's reliable history. It's considered reliable history, all in all. Maybe I should do what I've done before and clarify by italicizing this real quick. Don't worry, we're not going to go through this whole chapter today. I'm leaving this up for the next few devotions. So just for clarity, I'm reading what is not considered inspired scripture. This is Maccabees. After Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came from the land of Kittim, had defeated King Darius of the Persians and the Medes, he succeeded him as king. He had previously become king of Greece. He fought many battles, conquered strongholds, and slaughtered the kings of the earth. He advanced to the ends of the earth and plundered many nations. When the earth became quiet before him, he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. He gathered a very strong army and ruled over countries, nations, and princes, and they paid him tribute. So far, Maccabees would confirm, what's happened. A warrior king will arise. He will rule a vast realm and do whatever he wants. But as soon as he is established, his kingdom will be broken up and divided to the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his descendants. All right, let's see if Maccabees still holds up. After this, he fell sick and perceived that he was dying. So he summoned his most honored officers who had been brought up with him from youth and divided his kingdom among them while he was still alive. And after Alexander had reigned 12 years, he died. Then his officers began to rule, each in his own place. They all put crowns on after his death, and so did their descendants after them for many years, and they caused many evils on the earth. So remember, it's italicized because books of Maccabees are historically accurate. They're just not considered inspired scripture. They all put on crowns. Okay, you realize what that indicates? That means that they're no longer considering themselves subservient vassal nations. They're considering themselves their kings of their own empires. This further confirms then what we see prophesied in Daniel 11. It will not be the same kingdom that he ruled. So that's quite a political prediction. Imagine somebody making the same prediction about the U.S. The U.S. is going to go through a civil war and it'll be divided and it'll become 2 different nations again. The state of Washington aligned with parts of Oregon and Southern California, excluding Northern California and Eastern Washington, will all become their own liberal nation state, ruled by dictator Trudeau. Something like that. Like if somebody were to come make a prediction like that, you'd be like, wow, that's quite a tall tale, because you can imagine the sense of security that everybody felt in ancient Greece. Like, man, with Big Al in charge, we're unstoppable. And he's so young, he's going to live to be an old man, and his empire is just going to grow and grow. It's not how it went down. And it actually went down exactly as it was predicted here. His kingdom is broken up 4 different ways, and it's not the same kingdom that he ruled anymore, because his kingdom will be uprooted and will go to others besides them. All right, so far, First Maccabees is aligning with what Daniel predicted, and by the way, so is the historical record. Then his officers began to rule, each in his own place. They all put on crowns after his death, and so did their descendants after them. Okay, this is what led to the Seleucid Empire, the Ptolemaic Empire. The other 2 empires kind of shrank by comparison. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids are the ones who would really grow in prominence. Okay, now this is a bit of a glimpse of what we're going to look at more in chapter 11 tomorrow. From them came forth a sinful root, Antiochus Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus. He had been a hostage in Rome. He began to reign in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So now Maccabees 1, First Maccabees 1, beginning in verse 10, has now gone beyond the scope of the first 5 verses of Daniel chapter 11. Okay, so just in the first 5 verses, we've got a good chunk of the intertestamental period established. We've got the next kings, we've got Big Al, we've got the division of his kingdom into these new kingdoms, and then even within one of those 4 kingdoms, we've got a feud between the king of the south and one of his commanders, and it's already predicted that splintering, that commander who would abandon the king of the south will go on to lead something that's bigger than his. So while under Persian rule, this angel has prophesied to Daniel the coming rise and fall of Greece, and then the subsequent uprising of the Ptolemaic and Seleucid empires. We're only 5 verses into Daniel chapter 11, and the world history, as well as so far the book of Maccabees, aligns with all of it. Okay, when you go through Daniel chapter 11, try to imagine somebody making a similar prophecy about the U.S., and you'll see how audacious the scope of these prophecies is. Wow, you're really going out on a limb to say that, because we felt pretty secure. We feel pretty established, right? And so these are audacious prophecies. They're massive in their scale. The odds of them coming true are slim to absolutely none. All right, the odds of those things being prophetically true, if they were arrived at randomly, are just infinitesimally small. There's no way that could have been guessed, and we're just 5 verses in. So stay tuned tomorrow and look at more of the intertestamental period of history foretold in Daniel chapter 11.